is In the Zone on KSAL.
Back inside the Sprint Center in Kansas City, our special NCAA tournament coverage of the Kansas Jayhawks, powered by Next Tech Wireless. And to continue our coverage, we have a special guest, one of my personal favorites, my icon, my idol, best way to look at it. And you can hear that legendary voice, can't you? That's Kevin Harlan of CBS Sports, and certainly a tremendous guy and a KU alum. And Kevin, first and foremost, let's get the obvious question out of the way. How does it feel to be back in Kansas City?
Pat, it's great. I've enjoyed every moment of it. First of all, no airplanes and no hotel room, and that has been the best part of it. From a personal standpoint, professionally, to cover the Jayhawks is an honor. But to cover any elite team in college basketball is fun because it's the highest level of basketball. They operate on a different plane, and I just always admire guys as they work through the entire season with these young kids. And they spend that season becoming what they are right now. And that's such a wonderful story to chronicle and watch.
You've seen so many great Kansas teams come through the NCAA tournaments. Where does this team rank amongst the rest? They just got done taking down a very tough Purdue team by 32 points, which is unheard of in a Sweet 16 game.
I think Josh Jackson is the difference. They've had veterans before, Pat. You know, they've been able to make their way through conference seasons and win games and, get in the tournament and sometimes not make it beyond the first weekend, sometimes getting to just the second weekend and that's it. But the difference is they get the number one kid in the country who joins three veterans. And to me, that's taken the pressure off of Josh. And I think they've learned stuff from Josh by his competitive side that makes him so unique. And that marriage has been, I think, the great story of this season. That kid has been allowed to grow. They've not had to accelerate his growth. He came in already hitting the ground running, but he did not have the added pressure of having to lead and be the guy every night. That was Mason, or that was Devontae, sometimes Josh. And I think that it's just worked out. It's by happenstance, it's kind of worked out that way. And it's made it, I think, as compelling a story as any in this tournament.
Chatting with Kevin Harlan of CBS Sports on our special coverage of the NCAA tournament of the Kansas Jayhawks, powered by Next Tech Wireless. And Kevin, Frank Mason III has been so terrific. In that game versus Purdue, I think all eyes were on Josh Jackson. Devontae Graham was terrific. But I'm not sure if I've ever seen a player go for a quiet 26, 7, and 7 on 9 of 11 shooting. He is a remarkable player, isn't he?
Good point, Pat. No, he was absolutely in the flow of the game. Nothing was taken out of context. He never tried to flex. He never tried to look at it. It was all in the flow of the game, and that's why you say it almost goes unnoticed. But it happened so easily for him. And that's the beauty of his game. He does not have to be this dynamic, dramatically good player. He just has to be who he is. And who he is a guy that can fit any situation, give you what you need in those situations. And that's what makes him so special. He's really a unique player that way.
When was the last time you saw a 360 dunk at the college level during the game by LaGerald Vick during that game versus Purdue?
That was pretty sweet. That was a 10+. I think any group of judges would have given him a 10. The way he got up and the way he did that. And, you're so exposed when you do that. And in the back of his, maybe these kids don't think that way. They don't think of failure. But, if he screws that up, that's a pretty embarrassing moment at national TV and everything else. But these kids are confident. And I think it's that confidence that the team did not have a year ago offensively. They did not have that same feel, and they've got that this year. And Vic is a great example of that.
Talking with Kevin Harlan of CBS Sports with our NCAA tournament coverage of the Kansas Jayhawks, powered by Next Tech Wireless. Kevin, Frank Mason III, a lot of people look to him and wonder, what is he going to do at the next level at the NBA? Is he going to get a fair shake? Could be one of those guys that maybe goes undrafted, becomes a Fred VanVleet, who is certainly the number one name that pops out when you're looking at Frank Mason III. You have seen so much NBA. Where does Frank Mason really stack up in terms of his opportunities to maybe get a fair shake at the next level?
Well, I think he'll get a fair shake just because he's been so good. And he could be eventually here named the National Player of the Year. He's the highest scorer they've had since Danny Manning. He's done some incredible. Bill Self just said a couple minutes ago, Pat, you heard he's the best player he's ever been around. That's high praise. Bill's been around some very good players, high drafted players, number 1 overall drafted players. So that's high praise from Bill. I don't know if you're a winning organization in the NFL, how you could not take a long look at that kid and not say, here's a guy that could run our offense, smart player, competitive guy, makes good decisions. I don't know how you couldn't look at him and not think the best. Kids that come from these great programs, they've already got a couple notches carved because they've been on a gigantic stage. They will not blink, and certainly Frank is not one to blink at anything, let alone an important game. I think he just goes with that steely demeanor of his, and he continues to perform. So I think that, if you're not counting on him to be a prolific scorer, which I think he could probably do, but if you're not counting on him to come in and just be devastatingly offensive-minded, but just a guy that you're going to plug in there and he's going to run your offense, he's going to score his points, but he's going to get everybody involved, he's going to push the pace, he's going to read the defense well, I think he would be a terrific draft choice. Now, he may drop to the second round. He may not even get drafted at all. His size is probably a concern to some scouts, but his speed can't, his mind isn't, and I think he's going to be a very, very solid pro.
Well, if he's able to win a national championship, something tells me that'll help out as well. But in order for Kansas to go on to the Final Four, the Jayhawks have to get by another conference champion, and this time it's the Oregon Ducks. Dylan Brooks, certainly a phenomenal talent. Ennis really took over the other game versus Michigan. This Oregon team, maybe not a lot of people are taking this Oregon team quite so seriously, but this Ducks team, a lot of people forget how successful they were last season. Just kind of like Kansas, they were one game away from going to the Final Fours, making this an interesting showdown on Saturday.
Absolutely. A team that's won a lot of games, had a share of the conference title. They have the Player of the Year on their team in the Pac-12. They've got the Defensive Player of the Year on that team. They've got the number 2 scorer right now in the tournament on that team. So they have 3 guys right off the bat that are going to be very big concerns. And, they've lost this rim protector, this kid named Boucher, who is a great shot blocker, defensive-minded, long kid, smart reader. So they're kind of in this position of adjusting on the fly to figure out what they are now. They're not whole defensively, they admit that. They're not as good as they were. But if they can manage their defense and, hit some shots, and as we all know, that's the key in Kansas, a great case in point. They've been hitting their shots. If you hit your shots in this tournament, you're going to advance. And this is a team that can easily do that. They can defend, and they're athletic. They're a lot like Kansas, actually. Going to that Purdue game, you thought, well, there's this 7'2" kid named Haas. There's this Caleb Swanigan, who might be the Player of the Year in college basketball, who's like 28 double-doubles a game, a season, all-time Big Ten record. And so you weren't really sure what you were going to get because of the size difference. Well, as it turned out, it was nothing. It was an adjustment by Kansas, and bang, off to the races they were. So, but I think this game is different. And as Bill was just saying, you get on that stage where you're this close to touching a Final Four, there is pressure. I don't care how many times you've been through it. There is that pressure. And it'll be interesting to see how both teams react to it because both teams were in the same exact position a year ago and lost.
And it should be a lot of fun. I can't wait for the showdown. It should be great. Can't wait to hear your call, as always. But last one here for you, Kevin. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, talked about how special it was to cover the Kansas Jayhawks. As a guy who constantly covers the NBA, covered the Super Bowl, covered the NFL. You cover so much, do it all, radio, TV, which is why I respect you so much. You're the most complete broadcaster in the industry, and that's why it's such a pleasure to chat with you. But when you get an opportunity to cover the Kansas Jayhawks, how special is it being a KU alum, getting an opportunity to do that? And a guy who didn't do too much with KJHK, might I add, had to throw that out there. Found that out the other day, so I have to call him out on it a little bit. But still, getting a chance to call the Kansas Jayhawks has to be special.
It is, Pat. First of all, thank you for your kind words. I'm a Jayhawk through and through. 4 of the best years of my life were spent in Lawrence on that campus. I wouldn't be who I am today, both as a husband, father, and as a broadcaster without those years at KU. So I owe it so much, and the people I came across there so much. But while there is a sense of professionalism and down the middle and all that, I've got to, at the end of the day, I see fellow Jayhawks like you. I talk to people and have dinner with a bunch of my friends here in Kansas City who are Kansas grads, and it is nice to boast about your school and to be a part of something bigger than you are. So there's not anybody out there who doesn't have that same feeling when broadcasting their own team. But for those 2.5 hours, all I really care about, to be quite honest, is a good broadcast for CBS, and I want our broadcast to go great. And I would take that, to be quite honest, over anything that happens in the game. If the game goes toward Kansas, it's a double win. But first and foremost, I've got to call the game as fairly for the Duck fans as I do for Jayhawk fans. And that's a good challenge. I like that challenge.
A pro's pro. You just heard it right there. A pro's pro. Kevin Harlan of CBS Sports. Kevin, thanks a lot for the time. I greatly appreciate it. Have yourself a good call on Saturday.
Thank you, Pat. Great to see you and all the success you're having. One of the great young voices in this business. You're at a terrific station. I was a student and would drive across Kansas and listen to KSAL all the time, and admire what you're doing and where you're going. And it's great to be on. And I'll say this very, very softly, okay? Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Yes,
Thanks for the kind words. That's Kevin Harlan of CBS Sports, and that does it for our special NCAA tournament coverage of the Kansas Jayhawks, powered by Next Tech Wireless.